The following podcast does contain mature language and, more importantly, spoilers for the MSQ of Final Fantasy XIV, up to and including Endwalker. You have been warned, and now, on with the show. From the many realms of Eorzea to the distant reaches of the Two Moons via the magic of podcasting, this is episode 7 of A Podcast Reborn, a show celebrating our journey in the past, present, and possible future of Final Fantasy XIV. This episode is being recorded on Sunday, February 6th of 2022, a week before we're visited by a superb owl. My name is Brian Black, otherwise known as Ro, and with me, as always, are my two wonderful co-hosts. First off, a Vieira-loving gremlin who just made Careless Whisper an honorary Makote. Hi, Meagan.
Yeah, I had to give her the cat ears so she wouldn't feel left out.
I saw that. Now, if only you could get the orchestrion in the barracks to play Careless Whisper.
Yeah, no, I can do it. You could do it with saxophone. That's one of the bard instruments, so I got that covered. And
with Meagan, as always, is a summoner who likes to demonstrate his skill in Wordle. Hi, Brandon.
Hi, everyone. I have a question for you all. Why did our tank get lost?
Why?
Because it was a dark night.
Oh, my.
I have a question for you, Brandon.
What might that be?
If there was a lopper on the moon that practiced abstinence, would its name be No Fucking Way?
Well done, sir. Well done. I tip my hat to you. Except I'm not wearing one because I'm a male Vieira.
But that's not all. It's not just the three of us. It took 7 episodes for this to finally happen, teased only in about half of them. But
we got Ward back.
Right. Making his first appearance on the show, another person who, for me, was key in bringing me back to Eorzea over a year ago, formerly of Azeroth Roundtable, currently from a little podcast called Core. He's a rogue that's lacking Caft. I don't know what that's about. He still wants you to know that he had a very good game with Stitches in 2018, though. It's Jon Jagger. Hi, John.
Hi, I want you to know that I found all the jokes funny, but I'm not allowed to make any sound until I'm introduced.
Fair.
It's in my contract.
Oh, man, I knew I should have my lawyer look that over.
Hi, welcome
Hi,
to the
everybody.
show, man.
Hey, why do we say Eorzea? Are we only representing the continent? Isn't it Atheris? Can we just say it's Atheris now?
I mean, we should be saying Atheris,
no,
right?
Atheris is what it was when it was unsundered.
Right.
Okay, do we call it Hydaelyn then?
Yeah, we call it Hydaelyn, or the Star.
I think we all call it Atheris now.
Yeah, I think John's right. I don't think we can call it Hydaelyn anymore, because, she kind of dead.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
but
I mean, you could call it Hydaelyn in memoriam,
Yeah, let's name it after her.
I don't want the abbreviation for this planet to be him.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'd actually find it interesting to see if they start adopting that, because, I mean, we're going to have some content that's going to take us outside of Eorzea, where or not happens in this expansion or not. I think some of it will. It'd be interesting to see if they start saying Atheris more often. I mean, if you think about it, it probably should be Atheris, because if you think about the final scene, one of the final scenes of Endwalker, when you use the Stone of Azim and bring the science back, Urianger says something so that we can return back to Atheris. So Urianger refers to it as Atheris. So,
well, the thing is, I think the Scions and probably the Sharlayans will refer to it as Atheris, but 99% of the population has no idea about what we've been doing in the past, or about the Ancients, or even about the Sundering.
We're taking it back. I'm telling you, I'm gonna put money down right now. It's gonna be Atheris from now on, going forward. You can consider that a prediction promise.
Just imagining that the Warrior of Light has to explain it to everybody whenever they go anywhere.
That's what the next patch is. Yoshi P said it was going to be on the nose. It's going to be Warrior Light lets everybody know what's up.
The lecture tour.
The Warrior of Light writes a book, goes on a book signing tour. The book's called Welcome to Atheris.
Yeah.
The book's called I Time Traveled, Trust Me.
I just think for like neatness of story, right? Like you get away from now. Hydaelyn is very much a character that we interacted with. You know, that is essentially a person's name now. I think you really muddy the waters if you try to keep it that going forward. Eorzea obviously is too limited in scope unless you're just in Eorzea, which, as you mentioned, Rogue, we're probably not going to be going in the future, at least not all the time. So I think they put it on my armor. So I'm going to say that Atheris is going to be the word going forward.
They did?
Yeah, there's armor of Atheris.
Oh, you're right. It's like the level 89 dungeon or something like that.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that. You're absolutely correct.
So that's, again, a prediction promise. In other words, I promise it'll happen, but it's still really only just a prediction.
A promise diction.
Yeah.
Well, John, with it being your first time on the show here, I mean, there's definitely a number of things that we could go into, like your entire history of Final Fantasy XIV and stuff. And I don't know if we want to necessarily go through all of that, but there is one important thing that I want to ask you.
God,
that I'll save for
I know what this is.
Well, no, it's not the question about Sylvanas. We'll save that for the end of the show.
I was worried. I was like, oh no, is he going to ask me about Sylvanas?
No. We'll save that for the end of the show when most people have already tuned out and don't care. No.
Sylvanas. Warcraft since BF8.
But no, my actual question is quite simply, what did you think of Endwalker, and how does it compare to just your experience in like Shadowbringers and Final Fantasy as a whole? Like, what did you think of this journey recently?
I think Endwalker has been great. You know, one of the hardest things to do in any form of media, I think, is stick the landing. And especially for something that runs this long with this level of expectation tied to it, you know, I think it's a really, really hard thing to do. And I think the game achieved it, which is to be applauded. I would say it is easily, you know, from A Realm Reborn to Endwalker. I think, you know, Endwalker would right now be my favorite expansion in the game, which there could be a little bit of recency bias for sure. You know, it's the newest one. It's the first one that I'm coming to, you know, fresh as it comes out. So that's going to have a lot of excitement too. I don't know if I would say it was the most impressive expansion. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, because Shadowbringers, I feel like, you know, the competition, right, is going to be, well, what do you like? You like Shadowbringers, or do you like Endwalker? I know there are some people that are, you know, big on Heaven's Ward still, but I think to me, in general, my, you know, non-scientific room temperature taking is that people prefer either Shadowbringers or Endwalker at this stage. And
is that our community's version of Kirk versus Picard? I love it.
I feel like it's heading that direction, right? And to me, I think Shadowbringers is a more impressive expansion when you think about what it accomplishes, because I knew going in by reputation it was good, but so many, like, nobody, I had no idea what to expect. Like, even at the end of that patch content, you're like, where the hell is this going? I don't know what's going on with this. I don't know what we're going to do. I guess I'm going to go to the Crystal Tower and look for something, but who knows what's coming next? And then when you realize that you're getting, you know, in a very reductive way, the Final Fantasy version of Warlords of Draenor, you're like, oh no. Why is this the one everybody likes? Like, I went there and I was like, man, are people dumb? Because I don't think I'm going to like this one. Like, I was invested in this war and what's going on in Garlemald, and I was really into this moment. And you pluck me out of that and you put me in a different place surrounded by entirely new characters, except for a few, and go, hey, care about these people and their plight. And I was just like, I don't. Get me back to where it matters. And I think the hurdles narratively that Shadowbringers had to get over were very big. And the fact that it not only does it, but by the time you're saying goodbye to the first and you're leaving, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go. Like, I spent the whole first part of the expansion wondering why I was here. I get to the end and now I'm like, man, what if we didn't go back to the source? I like it here. It's nice here. It's got pixies and all sorts of stuff that doesn't exist in the other place.
I think that's just a huge difference between an alternate world and an alternate timeline, because I was recently reading some recap about how much everybody hated Warlords of Draenor, and I was remembering it all, having the horrible war flashbacks. But like in Warlords of Draenor, it was like anything that happened, it was kind of like meh. It's an alternate timeline, like it's all just gonna be deleted, or like if anybody dies, well, our version's fine. But like this one is like, if someone dies on this world, like they're dead. This is the only version of this character that exists.
Yeah, and I think it did a really good job of setting up those stakes fairly early on too. Although it is a bit abstract with the notion, and even later after I was sold on it, I was still sitting there going, but how would it work? Because it kind of makes you think this abstract thought, which is, if you fail in the first, somehow the events that are going to destroy the source are going to transpire. Black Rose is going to run amok and destroy everything. And by stopping one in one place, even though it doesn't have a direct, extremely visible correlation, you prevent it in the other. Like, it's a weird thing to try and wrap your head around, but essentially that's the case it makes to you. It's like, hey, you fix things here, you prevent an imbalance here, and things will be okay there.
It's all about the ether connection, and like if the ether's super out of balance, which I also really liked the fact that they used light as the evil force, and like the Sin Eaters were so cool, and like just the idea of like, oh yeah, Void's bad, everybody knows that, but like also light can be really bad too, you guys. They just looked so cool with their whole angelic thing, and the fact that they were all like forgiven this, forgiven that, and then like, oh, I loved them.
It's funny because you mentioned that, and I realize, and of course, all of us being former World of Warcraft players, there's going to be some parallels, and World of Warcraft's going to get mentioned a few times. That's just how we are. Back over in Warcraft, there's teasings and like allusions to this big war between light and dark going on, and they did some things to kind of plant the seeds that like, hey, light can be bad too. Shadowbringers already pretty much did that quite definitively, and did it in a very impressive way. You kind of talk about the whole Warlords of Draenor thing, about how Shadowbringers is doing that. I feel like with Shadowbringers, it's an alternate, but it's not quite like Warlords of Draenor, because in Draenor, it's like you're dealing with characters and an alternate timeline of things that we're familiar with. The first, I mean, although it's a reflection, the first is just so extremely different from the source that it just, I mean, it might as well be another planet.
Oh, yeah. And it's all because of the flood, the light, that it got shifted too far in the realm of light, which is also like, oh, with the heroes of the light there that accidentally caused that by like trying to be cool and save the planet, and then it was like, oh no, it's like that could have been us. Oh dear. But yeah, it's like Final Fantasy, the whole Final Fantasy 14 theme is like balance, and like nothing is all good or all bad, or you don't want too much of anything.
And I think that's why those differences between, what they did with Shadowbringers versus, why there are problems with the way Warlords of Draenor was presented. I think that's why those differences are important, because it allowed one to thrive versus one not necessarily being particularly well received by the community. And I would be surprised if WoW did any time travel alternate reality stories anytime soon. Whereas I don't know if Final Fantasy did do a new expansion or proposed a patch where we were going to go visit another world. I think that the player base, which from what I had heard, because I asked, because I knew how I felt, but I was curious how people who were playing at the time felt about the prospect of going to the first. And I was told that a lot of people were very hesitant about the notion of the expansion as well, that people were trepidatious to begin with. But I think that would be different. I think they have proven it with what they did in Shadowbringers. And so if they said, hey, we're going to go to another Reflection, I think most Final Fantasy fans would probably be like, sweet, cool, tell us a cool story. I'm looking forward to it. Which is really a testament to what they earned there. And that's kind of what I mean with they achieved a lot. Because there's a big hurdle you have to get over with Shadowbringers. And for it to still be as well received and well liked as it is a testament to that. I feel like Endwalker, everybody was in. Like, you're ready to see the culmination of the story. Nobody was like, well, you want to end it. I don't know if I want to see the ending of the story. I'm really not that invested. Like, we all wanted to know what was happening. I know that people certainly had their reservations about, Xenos and Fandaniel as antagonists, especially considering how good Elidibus and Emmett Selk were. So there were definitely areas that I was like, oh, I wonder how this is going to go. I wonder where this is going to land for me. But I don't think anybody was like, you better prove it to me. You got to show me. I don't think you can do this. So Endwalker didn't have as much to earn. But I think they still managed to surprise so much and be so just so pleasing with what they did with the ending. And there are even things they did with the ending that I was like, I don't know if I like that, but I feel so happy. How can I actually not be happy? When I thought, surely we're going to lose somebody. Someone's not coming home, right? And, whether it was the trailer that really, set up Alphino is probably not going to be coming back. And it was like, well, is he a red herring? Are they really going to do this? And then you get to the part where all the Scions die and you're like, well, they're not all going to die. Look, I thought maybe someone was going to die. I thought, okay, maybe Thancred isn't coming back. But, once we start losing more than him, it's like, pretty sure they're coming back. They're going to find a way. I don't think we're going to lose everybody on this trip.
Yeah.
So
I was much more willing to believe the deaths in Shadowbringers because, like, I don't think they really faked us out that bad before. Like, especially with Thancred, when you do the duty and you're playing as him and, like, he's slowly getting beaten down and it just feels really tragic and, like, desperate. And then you just come around the corner and he's just sitting there and I was like, what?
Yeah, plus it would have been such a fine death for him. Like that would have been a moment where you're like, you know what? He's gone. I'm sad about it. But, this was an okay way for him to go. I'm okay with this, which is why I kind of believed he died in Endwalker, to be honest. I was like, maybe they realized, like, guys, we shouldn't have made him okay. That was a really good final moment for him. So let's maybe give him one more and this will be the last hurrah for him. So I was like, yeah, he's probably gone. And then they all started dying. I was like, they're all going to be back. So
yeah, the second, but like, I can't remember who was the second one to go.
Estinian.
Yeah, the second he went, I was like, nope, yeah, they're all coming back. There's no way this is permanent.
Well, as for me, it took a little longer for me. It was as soon as Y'shtola said, Azov's magic can be used to bring us back, but you mustn't. And I was like, oh, but we will, don't worry.
Yeah, that's the same reaction I had was, okay, you're telling me not to do this, but if I make it to the end and I don't really need a way back, you guys are coming back. You can freaking deal with it. That being said, in the mindset of my character at the time, doing that long, slow walk where you can't even run, through all the voices through your past, with these shadowy figures nearby, I was still pulling my eyes out because I'm like, I know my friends aren't dead. I know we're going to be walking together, to the end of this darn thing. If nothing else, because there's one more dungeon and I don't see myself bringing the frickin' Elpis trio back for that trust system.
And yet we almost did.
Yeah, that would have been pretty great. But at the same time, it's still, I mean, you as a player, you can imagine, like, okay, just from a sheer marketability standpoint, they're not killing off all the iconic characters in this franchise,
Sure.
but it still felt real. Just, excuse me, imagining it from your character's mindset.
Well, it was also Alice's point of like her being like she's not sad that she's gonna die. She's sad that like you have to face this alone. And she's like, you always have to be the one to face this alone, and I'm tired of it. And I was like, oh, Alice.
Yeah,
I know it's the way they designed the game. It's because we have to do a raid instead of just a dungeon.
But to John's earlier question of, are we Team Shadowbringers or Team Endwalker better? I think for me, that's why Endwalker is a better expansion, just because we all had nothing, no idea what to expect out of Shadowbringers. But then with Endwalker, we knew what to expect. We had extremely, extremely high expectations for it. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, Endwalker on all fronts knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it may be recency bias for me, possibly, but still, Shadowbringers was great. Endwalker was for me just that much better because it did exceed my expectations, and I didn't really even set my expectations all that low. I set my expectations at, I think this will be at least a Heaven's Ward quality expansion, and I consider Heaven's Ward to be pretty freaking amazing. So for it to exceed my expectations was great. The funny thing for me about Endwalker is it was so many little things. I think what made it great for me was just a lot of the attention to detail, a lot of the callbacks to what is really an epic journey when you consider all the way back from Realm Reborn. And I almost feel that Endwalker succeeds, that Endwalker is more powerful and succeeds more for someone who has played from the start within the last 6 months to a year. Like, if you started playing Final Fantasy XIV and started the Realm Reborn content within a year of finishing Endwalker, I feel it's just that much more powerful and makes an impression on you that much more, because a lot of those memories from the earlier expansions are still very fresh in your head. While people who've been playing this for like 8-9 years, some of the more powerful memories are definitely, that they make callbacks to, are definitely going to be there. But maybe some of the lesser things that they call back to, they may forget, be like, oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But you also never know, what is going to be someone's standout memory from the game, right?
Isn't it?
They get the whole room full of, characters, some of which, you may know, some of which you may not, depending on what, jobs and job stories you've done. But also, characters that you haven't interacted with a ton. And there were some where it was like, I played a white mage. I knew who Bangs and Shorts was. But I didn't really care about the white mage story, so I didn't really care that he showed up. That didn't mean anything to me.
I wish there'd been more job stuff in that. Because I saw some of my job guys there. My favorite guy is the little Lalafell who trains you to be a Endymion Marine when you're a scholar. And he was there. I saw him, but I didn't get any special anything. Right. And sort of same with me, because at the very beginning, when you're saying goodbye on the ship to leave, you can see a character from both the rogue storyline interacting with a character from the samurai storyline. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the little Lalafell, ball busting yellow jacket. And she's hanging out with the guy that walked around as a samurai, the Lalafell that walked around with the old man and me. And they're just chatting with each other. And I thought that was crazy and exciting to me, because those characters stood out. Meanwhile, there are some characters that, I spent a lot of time talking with. I didn't really care that they showed up because they just didn't hit for me. But that's going to be different, for everybody else. So I think putting it in there is fine, because everybody's going to have attachments to different arcs within it.
I now cannot wait for the Endwalker MSQ to be added to New Game Plus, because I absolutely missed that. I did not realize those two were in the background, and now I want to go look for them.
Yeah, it's a very quick scene. You actually can see it in the teaser trailer that they put out right before the game, because it does show the scene of the boat, like, or them hanging out on the docks, and you can see her. I think you know who I'm talking about, the little Lalafell.
Yeah.
They're just hanging out on the dock together. I don't know why they're hanging out together. I don't know how they know each other, but apparently they do, and they're just hanging out there. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's them. Why did they pick them? Who knows? But I was excited. I was stoked to see them.
Wait, you mean that weird-ass Rogadin who I walked with as a samurai is also part of the Thieves Guild? What the hell?
It's yeah, I mean, like, stuff like that is just really cool, and I love little fan servicey moments like that. And I think a lot of people will too. You know, I haven't done much of the Black Mage, but I did do the Evoker quest line with all the little Lalafell brothers, and I thought that was one of the best storylines in the game. I've enjoyed them so much, and so seeing them pop up in the story here and there, like, that's always a treat. But judging by OMF's reaction, it might not be a treat for everybody. So, like,
I was gonna say, you actually like the Coco brothers?
They're
You're probably
adorable.
the only person I've heard say anything positive about them.
I
Oh,
like
no.
them.
Yeah, they're amazing.
I like the Guildmaster just because, you know, he does show up later on in the Black Mage storyline. I won't say anything more than that. But the rest of them,
No,
I mean,
they're all incredible.
oh,
They're so cute. I don't know. I love little cowardly potatoes. But
yeah.
maybe
I mean, I also did the Black Mage quest line twice. Once as a a Highlander male, and again as a Rogadin female. And I'm just like, that thing you're all terrified of is like comes up to my waist. What the hell are you scared of?
I mean, that's what makes them so good. They're just these little murder bots. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that they're great as an introduction to, like, Wolda and, like, the culture of just Lalafells in Wolda in general, of, like, you know, the bluster and the what do you call it, the ambition at power, but, like, realistically they are little potato people.
I mean, if you're looking at it from that perspective, yeah. But I mean, I suppose I consider from a character perspective of my characters would think these guys are idiots. So yeah, but if you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, these are your introduction to, like, what the prominent culture of Ul'dah is. You know, these guys have a lot of political power because they're the guild masters of a respected, mage college in the city. And yeah, from that perspective, they definitely work out very well.
Well, they also run the shrine to oh god, what's his name?
Paul.
Nathal, yeah.
Yeah.
He's the god of commerce, which is,
It's
their
kind of
big
important
guy.
for Ul'dah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating hearing this stuff because as someone who has really only done Summoner and Red Mage, I've dabbled a little bit in Machinist. There's still a lot of job storylines that I have not explored yet.
Most of them, I should say, are really good. Then the ones that aren't good are really, really bad.
Well,
see, I actually land on the other side. I think most of them are bad. I'm usually pleasantly surprised when I like them. Like, I think most of them are awful. Especially the ones that will go on to become a different job later on. So, like, the introductory ones. Because almost every single one of those is, hey, you're new here. I think you might have a skill. Yeah, I'm pretty skilled. All right, well, we're going to teach you. How's that sound? That sounds pretty good. Hi, I also go here, and I think you suck. Oh, man, why does this guy think why does he think I suck? I don't know. Come back in 5 levels. Maybe we'll figure it out.
all
right, I'm back. Hey, you know a lot more. I still think you suck. Why does this guy hate me so much? And it's that until you get to the end, and then the jerk dies.
That was actually the major reason why I really liked the dancer quests, was that they introduced another dancer, and I was like, oh boy, here comes the fucking rival. And she was like, you're great, and I love you. Let's be best friends. And I was like, oh my god, so refreshing.
Yeah, you get over your shit with her real quick. There is a moment where she's like, maybe I'm not good enough. And you're like, we're good enough. And you're like, let's dance. And you dance, and then it's like, it's all good now. And you're like, this was so much better.
Yeah.
I can relate to this stuff because while I've only done Red Mage and Summoner, I remember Summoner has the rival there. There's definitely the rival thing going on in Summoner. And Red Mage kind of also has the rival thing there going on for a bit too. But more
Red
so...
Mage, I don't think so.
I would disagree with both of
just
those.
Briefly.
No, Red Mage absolutely has it. You have your little collection of people, and then the guy shows up and is like, I used to be part of your group, but you all were holding me back. And you're like, oh shit, it's the guy again. We got the guy.
But he doesn't hate you. He hates your cat boy master.
But here's the thing. This whole rivalry thing, I didn't think about it as much that like, oh yeah, that is in Summoner and Red Mage. But man, some of the Disciple of Hand, Disciple of Land quest lines totally have the rival thing going on there too.
It's an anime trope.
Yeah, I mean, what are you expecting out of that? I mean, you got to have some kind of new rival be introduced, because otherwise they're going to be affecting the main story. If there's someone you already know, then it's like, oh, we've got to write a different ending based on did you level this class or did you not?
See,
and I mean, sure, to tie it to the story itself, that person might also be your same class, but I don't really know what you're expecting out of the job storyline if you're not getting that.
My favorite job storylines are the ones that do like some crazy shit. Like I really like Samurai. Because I already spoiled this one time where you have to track down a weeaboo Lalafell who has stolen a katana and is doing trial by night, just attacking people on the street and cutting them down with this random katana because he heard that that's a cool thing that samurais do sometime. And you have to storm his pleasure yacht wherein he has cat girls in kimonos doing like traditional Japanese dances because he's just such a huge fucking weeaboo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say. Almost everybody agrees that one of the best job stories in the game is the Dark Knight, and the Dark Knight doesn't fall into that trope. So I would say that yes, it's frequent. Look, there's a reason Pokemon has gone as many years as it has, where you immediately name your rival who picks the Pokemon that counters yours. I get that, like, culturally it's a thing and it's a trend, but at the same time, like, every time they buck that trend, the job stories are better for it. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the Rogue class story is one of the best. I know the Dark Knight story, but I haven't played it fully. So I can't speak beyond what I know of it and that I've heard it's the best. So I will say my favorite job story has been the Rogue, which was definitely not that. The Dancer, which started, I thought was going to go that way and then didn't. And it was just like, oh, we're just going to dance and cleanse the land through our dance. How wholesome and different. Like, it didn't set the world on fire, but I wasn't just like dancing against my rival who showed up to say what a bad dancer I was every 5 levels.
Oh, it was so cute. And then like the very last dancer quest is like you and your dancer buddy like doing a little dance on a cliff top of like, oh, we've grown so much together.
Yeah, I took screenshots because it was important to me. As dumb as it was, I was like, I gotta take a screenshot of this because this is important. Like, this is a moment. We're dancing together. Like, I think that, you know, that's your chance to lean into the class fantasy of what it is. And I think if you look at something like the Rogues Guild and you look at what they do, like, they lean very heavily into the fantasy of that. Like, one of my favorite things is when the group of street toughs show up at your guild because they're mad at you, and they come walking in ready to rob you, and they have no idea what they've walked into because nobody knows that the Thieves Guild is even there. And they come in and they start hassling you, and they just get daggers thrown into them and like stabbed repeatedly. I was like, holy shit, this is the best quest line that ever existed. It's so good.
Really like the Rogues Guild lore of like they're anti-slavers, and like their whole fighting style is meant to be able to like fight in close quarters because they're fighting slaver pirates all the time, and they have the code to uphold and all this stuff. The only thing I'm not crazy about is the insane cockneyness, because how the fuck am I supposed to roleplay that?
Yeah, you got to talk about the Darkmans all the time and my stabbers. You know, it's it is. Look, if you have a hard time reading Final Fantasy quests, you're just like, oh, it's so much reading. Consider the rogue job hard mode for sure.
Oh, Lord.
It's a lot because
It's like you have an easier time understanding Urianger than you do.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
That's why anybody who complains about how Urianger talks, I'm like, well, you clearly didn't play as a rogue because
Seriously.
Urianger is, medium difficulty Final Fantasy reading. You gotta turn that up to hard if you want to really play here.
Well, I would say, yeah, rogue might also be my favorite because then it goes into the ninja quests, which are just hilarious. Karasu, I think, is probably my favorite villain.
Yeah, I find people's opinions on the ninja storyline depends on, okay, how much really, really cringy anime comedy tropes are you willing to accept?
How much anime bullshit do you enjoy? I am an anime bullshit enjoyer.
Yeah,
I apologize for nothing.
I am not, so I found most of that quest line to be like, okay, you're leading into the fantasy, I just don't really care for it.
Oh my god!
So
Well,
it's good in that regard. But
at that point, we hadn't been to Domas. We didn't know anything about like the eastern side of things. So I was very excited about learning all that because that was actually, back in Heaven's Word, I was doing ninja stuff.
What also isn't helped is the fact that when you do the patch content for ARR, you're kind of expecting that, okay, here's how the ninja job gets introduced to Eorzea. Yugiri goes and talks to the Rogues Guild, who at that point we don't really even know about. I think it's in like the very next patch that they added Rogue and Ninja in. And then you come around and you're like, where the hell's Yugiri? Who's this Oboro lame dude? I want my freaking badass Alra ninja.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing about the rogue ninja transition is just that it has always been in the history of Final Fantasy. It's always been one of the most jarring shifts because it's not hard to see like, hey, you're pretty good with a lance. Want to learn to jump and turn into a dragoon? It's like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Or hey, you throw fireballs real pretty. You want to throw bigger fireballs? Yes, I do. That's what I signed up for. Like, usually there's a good A to B to C as far as like the evolution of this. But
you want
with
to be
Rogue, you're a pirate. You're talking about Darkmans and stabbers, and you're just doing all this stuff, and you're living the fantasy, and they're achieving it perfectly. And then they're like, "Hey, you want to be a ninja?" And like completely change what the fantasy is. And for a while they lean into it. And I just wish they had done it a little more because they do things where it's like the Eastern feeling traditions of being a ninja are clashing with this Western methodology of fighting that you're bringing in. And they tease it a little bit with like the guildmaster trying to learn how to bow and he isn't really good at it, and they're like, that's not how we do it here. They put elements of it in, but it's still like it's so hard to go from living this very roguey piratey fantasy to all of a sudden now I'm doing mudras. I'm doing hand signs and throwing shuriken and stuff, and you're like,
so Naruto. It's nuts. And when you do the freaking mudras and like you do the freaking Naruto runs with your knives out and you summon a giant toad and like you're supposed to be going from like, yes, we live by the code, and then it's like, oh, my great honor, I will slay you from the shadows. And it's like
aren't pirates and ninjas supposed to be diametrically opposed anyhow?
I was going to say, wasn't there an era of the internet where it was all pirate versus ninja jokes?
We all knew the ninjas would win. But still, it hurts when you liked the pirates.
Well, no, I don't know. We don't need to reignite this fight, but, the pirates would cheat, and I think that would get them far. But I think that the rift between those two particular jobs, I think you need more than a level to explain, and I don't know if the game handles it particularly well. And as a result, I appreciate things in the ninja storyline for sure. I mean, when what's his name comes over and he strikes a pose just to talk to me, I'm like, oh my god! Like I roll my eyes, and I definitely didn't like it at first, but it did grow on me.
Okay,
and
it's more than anime bullshit. It's tokusatsu bullshit, which is like a level above anime bullshit. Like anime bullshit is embarrassing. Tokusatsu is what Power Rangers is edited from.
Yeah.
So it's dudes in costumes striking poses, and then they have the like smoke that explodes in the different colors and the,
Yes.
the goofy ass transformations and stuff. And that is what the ninja storyline is all about. And if you're like, oh, that sounds cringe as hell, I don't know, skip the cutscenes, man. I loved it.
One thing I definitely want to ask Jon is a question that we've answered for all three of us. I think last episode or the episode before, but getting your thoughts on Endwalker here. Of all the characters, whether it's a newly introduced one or one of the ones that's been around for a while, which is going to be a case with like 90% of the characters in Endwalker, which character for you is your MVP? Which character was just like your favorite of the whole bunch in terms of just whether it's character development or the moments they had? MVP can mean a different thing for all of us.
That's tough. That's really, really tough because, there's who I want to give it to, right? Like, I'm a huge Alizé fan. I think she's been just like from the get-go, she's been better than Alphino. And then she's not there for a while. And then she shows up and you don't have to grow with her. She shows up and she's great. And she just gets better.
Like, oh, this one's not insufferable.
But my only reason why I couldn't give it to Alizé, much as I would like to, is I just don't think she evolves enough in this story. Like, she's kind of this, like, very earnest, wants to try, wears her emotions on her sleeve girl that's, like, trying to, impress you, but also kind of become her own person. And that's where she starts, and that's where she ends. And I don't think that it's okay. Like, characters don't have to progress over the course of an expansion in a really meaningful way, especially if they don't die, because they're going to be around next expansion. They can evolve next time. We can focus on other things. But I just don't think she's become a different person than who she was in Shadowbringers. And I actually found her, like, anger at you staying behind to fight Xenos at the end a little ham-fisted, and I didn't particularly like that writing for her, where everybody else is just like, kind of like, oh, we're happy you're here, and she's gonna stay mad at you. I didn't love it. So as much as I love Alizé, and I would want to say her, I don't think I can. So I also, this is way I'm cheating, by the way. If you don't notice, I'm about to give like 3 characters. So this is how you cheat this answer. I also want to give like big kudos to a character like Fan Daniel, who I was 100% sure I was going to find completely obnoxious through the entire expansion and not empathize with and not find any depth to. I knew they were going to try, but I was like, how are you going to achieve this? This guy just wants everybody to die, including himself. How am I ever going to feel anything for this character? And then you meet Hermes and you're like, shit. Like, oh man, this is what I get for thinking they wouldn't be able to do anything with him. And like, it's crazy. You fight Fan Daniel like 3 times as a major boss over the course of the expansion. Like, you fight him a lot. He's like the final boss of like quasi one trial, a dungeon, 2 dungeons. Trying to think of how many times he showed up, but it's a lot. And I feel like it was different and new and interesting, and I really liked what they did with him. But I would also argue again, I don't feel like that arc was complete enough for me to go, oh, hands down, it's him. He would be who I would pick. I find it very interesting what they did with him. So I guess I'm going to go with my extremely controversial answer.
If you say Tataru.
No, I'm not going to say Tataru.
Hey, man, she put together our new artifact sets. That's just impressive.
Yeah, that is true. She really outdid herself. I was spending a lot. I was like, man, she didn't give us any clothes this expansion. And then I got to the end. I was like, oh, she gave us the best clothes. Look at her. She's the best. I shouldn't have doubted. I should have believed all along. I'm gonna give it to Xenos.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know that that's not gonna be popular with everybody, but that's fine.
I'm shaking my head over here just to make it obvious.
We have a long-standing disagreement about Xenos.
Yes, we
Xenos
do.
is one of the best characters in this entire series. Because Xenos, without being ham-fisted, is a reflection of our player character. Now,
I'm sorry. What?
there is.
I know where he's going with it. Go on.
Like, there is a way that you do the, like, you know, the Joker to the Batman, right? Like, there's a way that you do the, we want to put in the villain that is the counter to your character that just, we've seen it a million times. And they do that with Xenos, but they do it in a more subtle way. And what I like about Xenos is Xenos doesn't have a lot of agency. Like, he's not a character that has these grand machinations. Like, he kind of just gets pulled along by his position and role and power. Less so when we start with him as a villain, but definitely more so as he evolves over time and goes on his own journey. And Xenos and Endwalker spends the entire game basically chasing you, going, hey, notice me. And then you get to the end and then you fight him. And that's why I think a lot of people hate him, because it's like, well, he wasn't even that important. He's really one note. He's really one dimensional. Like, he's not good. But I disagree with that, because what Xenos is he is the embodiment of what this expansion was trying to teach us, which is that you need to find your purpose here. And it doesn't have to be a good purpose. Like, we get so caught up on the idea that, like, we have to live our best life. We have to live this perfect life. We have to live for other people. We have to live for this or that. And the message of Endwalker is not that you have to live for good. The message of Endwalker is that you have to find your reason to walk your path. And Xenos is one of the few characters through this that is at absolutely zero risk of turning into a creature and attacking you, because Xenos has his purpose. He knows what makes him happy. He knows what he lives for. And he's one of the few characters in this world, in this place where people are literally becoming monsters because they give into despair and hopelessness, that knows exactly why he's here. And he pursues you literally to the end of the universe to achieve his goal. And he tells you flat out, he's like, look, I live to fight you. And if I'm going to win, it's going to kill me to do it. But that's what I live for. That's why I'm here. That's my purpose.
And surely you must be above something as banal as despair, he even says.
Yeah, and he, like, the best line, because I was definitely, when it gets to the end and he, like, has his little throwdown with you, like, I wish I had the exact quote in front of me. I don't. But he basically looks at you and he goes, hey, I want to talk to you, but I don't want to talk to the hero. I want to talk to the real you. And you can get, you know, super creative with it if you want. If you think it's too up your own ass, you don't have to think of it this way. But it's very easy to draw a parallel and go, he's talking to you, the person at the keyboard controlling the Warrior of Light. He's not talking to the character. And he goes, look, you live for pushing yourself to new limits, fighting stronger and stronger foes, for nothing more than just to reach that next level and just to push yourself. And then he calls you an adventurer, not a Warrior of Light, not a big hero, not a champion or anything like that. He calls you an adventurer, which is where you started, because every single person at that keyboard started as an adventurer, taking jobs under just the premise of fighting more powerful foes and becoming more powerful and leveling up and going on this adventure. Nobody was a Warrior of Light in the beginning, and nobody in that moment fighting Xenos can claim that they are standing there because they knew they were a hero all along. Like, every single person started on this same path. And that's why, even though they give you a choice, telling him, I can't deny that, that's the actual truth. Everybody has walked the same path as Xenos. Every single person has. And it's led you to this moment, to this fight with him. And you give him his vindication, his reason for living, because that's what all of this has been about, was finding that purpose and fulfilling that purpose. It might not be your purpose now, which is why Xeno spends so much time chasing you instead of you chasing him, because your purpose has moved beyond his, but his hasn't changed. And you are going to grant that. And that is a cool evolution of a character that is complex and rich for a character that more often than not gets labeled as simply one note. And I think that's really cool.
I have to admit that you've given a perspective that I have not really heard much before about Xenos, and just kind of thinking about it's like, even though he loses in the fight with you in the duel at the end, Xenos kind of did get his happy ending.
Well, I think he wanted to die just as much as Van Daniel. He just had a very specific set of circumstances for it to happen under. Well, also, he's constantly talking about how he doesn't feel anything outside of combat. And I'm like, that is miserable. Like, imagine living like that. He's like, oh.
See, I don't know that I can agree with that point, because he does say, after you knock him the hell out, oh, I lost again. That's disappointing.
Well,
he says it's disappointing, and I don't know if any of you have read this theory. I've heard it. I haven't gone deep into it. But so Xenos tells you in that duel, he says, so I'm going to have to burn through the candle of my life to beat you, which to me reads that he is 100% certain that this fight is going to kill him. Like, he is either going to be standing over you, and honestly, he thinks it's going to kill you too. And by all accounts, it should have. I mean, when you think about it, when you wake up on the ship being healed by the Scions, you've got multiple healers there working on you, and you're almost home, because they go from telling you like, oh man, you shouldn't have done that. Like, hey, we were worried about you. Hey, by the way, we're home. You were out and in a really bad way. You know, for us, however you did in that fight, whatever, canonically speaking, your character very much almost died. And so I think it's fair to say that, like, Xenos knew that this was going to probably cost both of you your lives, and that his hope was just that he'd be the one standing when you fell. But the theory that I've heard is that, you know, you both collapse, you have your little talk, and then Xenos stops talking, and the teleportation remote lands on you. And you're in a place where emotion creates reality. And every time one of the Scions passed away, they changed the place physically with a manifestation of their will as they passed. And the theory goes that Xenos knows your purpose is more than him. And as he dies there, he manifests the teleporter to send you home.
oh my god.
That is interesting. I have not heard that one before.
I have heard that theory. The only possible hole I have in it is you would have to then assume that someone gave Xenos knowledge of what the teleportation device was and that it existed, or that some to that effect, because that's never really specified in game. I mean, you could say that's something that he was told, like, you know, like Kryle could have said that to him. It's like, hey, the Scions have these teleportation devices, blah blah blah.
I don't think that you need to know the exact whatever for how it's going to work. I think you just need to have the intent and the will of the emotion. So if you're like, I want him to be safe, and then it's like the Dynamis or whatever is like, yes, this is the clearest path to get them to be safe.
Yeah, like, I don't think Thancred died and went, now, when I construct land for them, I think maybe they should go around a circle here. Make sure there's no rocks there. But
let's have shadow dragons around for no.
Yeah, definitely some shadow dragons. Like, I don't think that they designed it. I think that, you know, it's a manifestation of will, and it could simply be that his death and desire for you to return home caused the teleporter of yours that's, you know, up swirling in the vortex to find its way down to you.
Gotcha. Okay, I can buy that. Also, I was just thinking that another thing to kind of back that up is when Emmett Selk and Hythlodaeus tell you to think of that which denies it, blah, blah, blah. I doubt you were necessarily thinking of a field of flowers, but the flowers manifesting is just basically Dynamis in action. And you were probably thinking, I'm going to win with flowers.
Right. You might have been thinking of the quote, though, because the quote does play after the field appears. So,
right.
I think it definitely, there's definitely an element of it works because magic. But when you think like we're replacing it works because magic with coincidentally, this thing that was in a completely different spot from where it got taken has been floating up in space and somehow lands right next to your unconscious dying body after you've been riding on top of a dragon, fighting a boss for who knows how long through a void. Like, both of those are real big logic leaps. And so I think that it's either one is fine. I don't think either one is ridiculous. Although I do think the first one's a little like you were on that dragon fighting for a long time. You shouldn't be anywhere near where that remote.
You were passing planets by
and having them thrown at you, no less.
Yeah. Yes.
So I recently played through the entire Endwalker MSQ again on my Catgirl alt, and I have a question for the three of you because. I don't think anyone's really talked about this. What was your trolley moment in Endwalker? And what I mean by that is we all, I think, can agree that the trolley section of Shadowbringers was by far the most probably annoying section of it where you're like, what am I doing here? Can we please just move this along? I am sick and tired of dealing with these people. What was your moment like that at Endwalker? And it can even be, I didn't have one.
Mine's easy. Because there's actually an area, it's not the trolley, but I know what you're talking about because I think that's one where the narrative slows down, but there's an equivalent of this in Shadowbringers as well. There's typically a zone, it's happened in the past 2 expansions, where as much as I think the Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack is the greatest video game soundtrack of all time, they pick absolutely the worst song for the zone you're in. And in Shadowbringers, it's when you go up the lift and are running around like by the Dwarven settlement and all of that. They play this very high intensity like beat of like, we're going to get shit done. We're going to fight. Like it's this very upbeat driving song. And then you're like running around casually questing for dwarves. And you're like, this is the wrong music for what I'm doing. And they repeat that same problem in Endwalker when you go, I can't remember the name of the zone, the underground place with the artificial sky.
Labyrinthos.
Labyrinthos. Yeah. When you're running around down there while they're supposed to be gathering up all the adamantite for you, they give you a bunch of fetch quests to do. And some of them are nice. Like it's got some great moments. It's got the Urianger meeting Moonbreeda's parents, which I think is one of the most wonderfully emotional and beautiful moments in the game. So I'm not going to deny that there aren't good moments in there, but that section of the game is an absolute slog because they want it, I guess, to be believable that all these people have gathered and done things for you and that it wasn't just instantly ready to go. But I think the questing is uninteresting. I think the music extremely doesn't fit what you're doing at the moment. And it's once again this very like driving moment and maybe made worse because it's in the opening cinematic. And so it kind of plays with your mind on what you expect to hear. And it just repeats over and over again. But I don't like the questing. I don't like the music. And for the couple moments that really stand out, the Moonbreeda's parents or cooking way, tasting lemons, like there's some nice bits, but overall it's too long and I don't like most of it.
Meagan, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree. I also remember that it had really weird music when you first show up. It's like a music box kind of thing going on. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything anywhere near as bad as the trolley because I literally, when I was leveling my potato through Shadowbringers again, would just skip anything. I would just like click, escape. Like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to read any of this. I don't want to sit through any of it. But I can't think of anything in Endwalker that I will just be like, nope. I think I also got lucky because Ward had gone through it before me, so he could help me with some of the more really annoying quests, like the one where you have to gather all the scientists and amp them up.
Get him.
Yeah,
get him to
that's
talk to the bunnies.
and that's in that section too. Yeah,
It is.
and
yeah.
I don't think it's as bad as the trolley section. Just to be clear, like the trolley section is a long, drawn out section that does not have anything redeemable for a very decently long window, whereas this has good bits sprinkled in. It's
Mhm.
just it's
I
too
think-
long, and the questing isn't very good.
I would hate the trolley section less if, like, the main guy in it wasn't such a dick.
Um,
What about you, Ro? What's your trolley section of Endwalker?
my answer's really going to confuse people who listened to last episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. I do want to comment quickly and say, as far as like the return to Labyrinthos, it's not at the top of my list, but I definitely understand that and get that. I feel like when everyone was out getting Allegan artifacts and retrieving this, that, and the other thing, I feel like that would have been a great place to insert a dungeon where we're going looking for some form of that, or even like a return to one of the coils of Bahamut to find some of that stuff. I think that would have been a bit more interesting, and perhaps you could have included Membrida's parents in with that and still had that moment there. But that being said, my trolley moment, it's weird because people who remember who my MVP is of Endwalker, my MVP of Endwalker is Living Way, but my trolley moment's the moon after Zodiark.
Oh, wow.
What?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Living Way is a great character, and the levity and the moments and just the acting and the dialogue and stuff like that. I love Living Way to pieces. After Zodiark happens, I understand needing to have that after that high intensity. I understand things need to take a step back for a moment. But I feel like the time on the moon and the running around and the stuff we did with the Loporits and stuff just dragged just a little bit too long for me. I kind of feel like, oh shit, we fucked up with Zodiark. We have a teleporter to get us back home. We need to get back down there and do something quick. And we don't. And I feel I have this kind of anxiety of like, okay, rabbits on the moon, got it. You got ship and stuff like that. I get it. But we need to let people know what's going on. And the fact that it just drug out just a little bit too long for me, that was definitely my moment.
I think for me, looking at yours, I understand it because I do think it's oddly paced. I mean, I love the Loporits.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to say, like, everybody is wrong because I know Living Way is very popular, and I know Pudding Way certainly has one of the best lines in the entire game, and I love Pudding Way to death, but Mapping Way is easily the best Loporit, and I won't hear otherwise. It's all
Mapping
about
Way is great.
I could listen to Mapping Way say the word doom over and over again all day. But no, I don't think the inside of the Loporit base needed to be a combat area, and I think it needed to be a lot smaller, because I think what I found myself thinking was, oh, this is going on a little long. And then when it was all said and done, I was like, they didn't explain why I was getting attacked by stuff in there. At least not very well. I was just like, I walked in and all of a sudden I'm getting beaten up. And it's like, you guys aren't very good hosts. Are we really expecting people to come live up here where robots are just killing us for no reason?
Yeah.
In fact, I actually died there. I think that might have been my first. No, because it was after the Zodiark fight. I died a lot. But I did die in the moon because I didn't realize it was a combat area. Because I was just like, oh, it's story and we're checking this out. And they certainly didn't build it up as a dangerous place. And I went AFK and I had a fate spawn on me.
Oh, no.
Ooh.
And I came back and I was just dead in the middle of a fate. And I went, what the hell happened? And that's how I found out that combat even happened there. I was like, what the shit is this? Like, it was so weird to me. And so I walked away thinking, well, I wish they had done a little bit more to explain, And then I was like, well, maybe they would have, but it got cut because it certainly feels paced too long. I think I would have rather maybe done a little less tailing Urianger. That could have been cut from there for sure. Make the area a little smaller and just say, you know what, not everything needs to be a combat zone. Like, it can still have its dungeon. Like, the dungeon's cool, but it just... I definitely get where you're coming from, Ro, I guess is what I'm saying.
I would like to change my answer to every tailing section.
Oh, every freaking tailing quest can absolutely burn in the seven hells.
I did not enjoy any of them. And it was always really dumb because it's like, they don't see you, even though you're like right behind them, and then you gotta find the one obvious rock. And it's like,
I'm just glad that for the most part, they kept most of those contained in the side quests. Now, I wish they hadn't contained them in side quests that were required for, acquiring pieces of gear or, I don't know, ether currents. But yeah, I thought we all universally agreed that escort quests were terrible back in vanilla WoW.
Well, the escort ones were okay.
Escorts are fine. The ones where like you're following the girl in Garlemald and she turns around and look at you, and if you're not behind something, then whoops. Or you're following Urianger and Urianger turns around. Both of those quests, no.
There's no winning. There's no winning with that quest design is the problem. Because if it's too easy, you feel like you're wasting your time, and if it's too hard, you don't want to do it. So I don't think there's a sweet spot. If you find the middle ground to that, I don't think it's fun. I still don't think it's fun. Like, there's no version of it where it's good. It's always like, well, I see exactly where I need to go. You always know when they're going to try and trick you or turn around twice or run. Like, you can always see it coming. And at the end of the day, you're just like, well, this is so easy, it's a waste of time. But also, thank goodness it's not hard, because that would be even worse.
Yeah, I like the escort parts. I really enjoyed like getting to run around Charlian with Graha and going to all the little extra things and have him be a nerd about wanting to buy more books.
Yeah, let me clarify something on the escort quest. I don't mind them as long as you don't impede my ability to get around quickly. Like, the second you have me drop people because I took an etherite or, I don't know, mounted up, that's when they go a bridge too far. I lost freaking Cooking Way multiple times in the garden area just because I'm like, all right, let me get on my motorcycle because I can't fly in here yet and go over to the next area. Why is this not triggering? Oh, fucking hells. Cooking Way, come on already.
They probably should have limited it to like cities where you can't mount up.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm a huge nerd, so I'm like, oh, look, extra stuff. Let's run over there.
Yeah,
no, I thought those were fine, but
I like all the extra lore bits where you get to talk to people and get comments on it, like the one with Alice and Alphino at the very end. That was just endlessly heart wrenching because, of course, you can't mount up in that area. It's it's by design. That's fine. Early parts of Charlian, you don't have all the Etherites. They running around with freaking Kryl and Graha. Heck yeah, tell me about this city. I want to know more. Anytime you're impeding my ability to get around quickly because I have that ability.
Oh, random fan theory. Do you think Kryl has the thing for Estinian? I think she does. I think she wants to climb him like a tree.
I mean, she's gonna have to get past Alphino first.
I think Alphino would be like, if it makes him happy, and then go cry in his room.
Anyway, just because we're running out of time, I do want to say my trolley section, I literally thought it was going to be Thavnair Part 2. Because the first time I did it, I'm still reeling from all the discoveries of what's going on. And y'all know me, I have gotten to the point in my life where I cannot handle violence on children.
Oh.
And so having that one kid get turned into a monster in front of his dad and then immediately squished and then almost losing that person's baby. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to grit my teeth and get through this because I won't enjoy myself. I forgot that section of the game is really, really short. So I was actually surprised when I'm like, oh, we're done with this already. Oh, okay. I thought I was gonna have to deal with these emotions for a long time before I could move on to the next thing, but we're done.
I think part of it is that for a lot of people, and I've heard other people, it didn't really have that effect on me, but there are a few people that I also know it had that impact on them, and it just feels so much longer because it's as uncomfortable as it makes you. It just causes time to, like, your perception of time dilates, and it feels longer than it is.
That is entirely
Yeah.
possible.
Well, it might be a parent thing for sure, because that section felt incredibly long and incredibly anxiety inducing. The only thing that really saved it for me was that so the part where the kid gets turned in front of his dad and then squished, was it like genuinely made me sick in the moment. But
same.
Doesn't his dad turn too?
No, and that's actually what saved it for me, because I got so mad that the dad didn't turn. I was like, that's horse shit. There's not a goddamn dad on the planet that wouldn't turn, and no amount of going up to him and going, "Hey, calm down," would have stopped him. Like, I got so mad at how fake that seemed that he got talked down from it, that it distracted me enough. I got to be angry instead of feeling disgusted.
Hey, you lost your kid, but calm down. It'll be okay.
Maybe if he had another kid that was there being like, "Dad, please calm down," maybe. He's like, "I gotta live for the other kid." But no, otherwise, Jesus Christ, this man is a psychopath. Can we put him in jail, please?
Yeah, he clearly didn't care enough about his child, because but there would be no consoling me. Like, I might not even turn into a creature and I'd attack who told me to calm down. Like, he got basically the equivalent of Zuko, "that's rough, buddy" speech, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right."
It's true. But yeah, my actual answer ends up being the same as John's. That whole section of I don't even necessarily mind anything after the Moonbrita parents cutscene, which was fantastic and heart-wrenching. Just everything involving the Loporrits and Urianger before that, where we're escorting them around. And I think this has something to do with my dislike of, needing to spend more time than necessary doing something I don't like. Because at that point, you're having to essentially do switchbacks to go back up Labyrinthos to get up to that farm area, and you can't fly at that point. And it just seemed like it was designed to basically waste time, and I hated it so much. And I'm like, can we please move on? I know what's coming next. I know I'm going to get my heart torn out by Urianger. Can I just move on to that, please? And that quest where you have to find 8 people who need help from the Loporrits can freaking die in a fire.
Yeah, that one's pretty bad.
I liked the one where it's like you find someone and they're just losing their shit, and it's like, this person is beyond help.
Yeah, it should have been that dad. I'm still mad about that.
I think there's one researcher who's like, this person's doing better than you. I'm like, Yoshi, do you have something to say to me?
Yeah, that part was rough. The baby thing was also really rough. Seeing it go in the water was like that was jarring for sure and upsetting.
I was sure when you come up on the dad and it's the dad's corpse and there's 2 blasphemies there, I was like, oh fuck, that's the mom and the baby. Like, they turned.
I didn't think about that. I don't think my brain allowed me to think about that.
Well, and I think if they hadn't squished the kid, I would not have thought the baby was really in danger. But once they crossed that line, I was like, oh fuck. Like, it nobody's safe. Like, because most video games have that really clear line of like, yes, you can hit this town with a nuke, but you can't kill any children.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you guys this. As soon as we got to the point where it's like, okay, Minucia's got the kid back to the village, he's safe, I had to get up, walk away from the computer, and basically puke my guts up.
Ooh,
just because the anxiety and the fear that kid was either going to die or turn in his freaking little giant elephant man hands, it was too much. I tried to walk away, and the stress just got to me, and I just had to,
I was very upset when the baby started glowing.
So I'm like,
I think that moment when the baby starts emanating shadow, you're just like, fuck.
Well, and then he does, and then you get to the part where he turns his back because he knows he's going to die, but he's still going to try and shelter this baby, even though the baby's turning, and you're like, come on, game. please don't. And then Estinian saves the day. And I'm like, you know what, Estinian? Be Batman. I don't care. You could be whoever you want to be. You're fine. You saved me from a really bad situation. You be whoever you want, dude.
It definitely a tough moment for a lot of people experiencing the game. I mean, it had a little bit of an impact on me, not as much I think as it did. But I will. I guess the best way to kind of end that is to say, can you really think of many other games that you've played in your lives where a story could do that to you in a video game? For better or worse. And I think that just kind of speaks to just how powerful a story that freaking Endwalker has been.
Definitely not an MMO.
Yeah.
No.
Although most role-playing games I've played don't really have kids involved at all.
Yeah.
I the best.
A conversation to have for probably another time, John, when you come back on. But I'm curious. I'm definitely curious to have a discussion with you about how Final Fantasy XIV ranks with other Final Fantasies in terms of story. And I almost want to say it's unfair to compare them with the other Final Fantasies, right? Just because there's so much more story. But I'm still curious.
I think it's very tough to compare because at least right now. So for anybody who doesn't know, I guess I can turn this into a quasi plug. But right now, I got so into Final Fantasy XIV that I was like, you know what? I've never beaten a Final Fantasy. I've played almost every single one of them, but I've never actually beaten one. Closest I got was 3 on the 3DS, where I made it to what I now recognize as the Crystal Tower, and then read a FAQ that was like, hey, here's a cool way to unlock the Onion Knight class. And I tried it without thinking and friggin' erased my save.
No.
And it was bad. So that's the closest I had ever gotten to beating one. And other than that, just various, different lengths through multiple Final Fantasies throughout the years. So I was like, you know what? The Pixel remaster's coming out. This is a perfect time to go back and revisit the series, especially because I'm such a fan of 14. And I started playing through all of them again. And so far I have beaten Final Fantasies 1 through 5. I've completed. Nice. And the reality is that just in the era of NES and SNES, as much as I love games like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that, you go back to those games and they just don't have the benefit of being able to tell the big story that they clearly want to. You have to learn to read between the lines, to look into things, to take things more than what's presented at face value. And Final Fantasy XIV has the benefit of not doing that. In fact, I think one of the game's biggest strengths is the fact that it is so willing to explain why it's doing the things it does, why things work, why things go the way they go, rather than just say, hey, trust us, Aetherites, right? Like they want to tell you, they want you to understand it, they want you to figure it out. And I think in that regard, it's hard to compare them because you look at a game like Final Fantasy IV, which is, one of the first ones that really got a lot of attention for its story. And its story is almost comical because they just don't have enough time to go into why you being from the moon and there being 2 moons and the moon is a ship. All this stuff is like actually kind of cool. And when you do the parallels and you're like, oh, look at all the, Final Fantasy IV references they're doing in Endwalker, they have a lot of time to explain why in 14, and they don't have that in 4. And also, I'm not a little kid anymore, so going, there's rabbits on the moon isn't enough to get me to go like, oh, and amazed in wonder on its own anymore. Like it needs to be wrapped in something. So it is a little unfair, but 14 is genuinely an amazing game. It is currently at the top of my favorite Final Fantasy list. If I was going to put it together on the ones I finished. And as far as I'm concerned, I finished 14. It might be just the first arc of 14, but it said Finn on the screen. It said it. So I feel like it's done. I can say that we finished.
It's volume 1, right?
Yeah. What? next is Final Fantasy 14-2, where everybody is a pop star. And
Hell yeah.
And there's dress sphere changes. And
oh my gosh, that's how they fix the transmog system. They
Oh,
get rid of the
man.
job system and they just do dress spheres across the board.
I mean, what is a job stone if not a dress sphere?
Yes, 100%. We solved it here.
Yeah, now I'm in my brain like, what can I do for you?
Oh no. And speaking of anime bullshit,
Look, that was my big one that I was really into. All right, don't blame me.
Here's the thing, Meagan. Final Fantasy X-2. I will admit this, and people will go. Final Fantasy X-2 is one of my favorite Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
figure.
There have been 2 games when I announced which Final Fantasies I was playing through that have gotten the most like, why aren't you playing this one? Because I basically, the agreement was I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 15. That was the agreement. Skip the MMOs and not do sequels. And the 2 games that universally everybody came back and was like, you should really put this on your list. Number 1 was Final Fantasy Tactics. And then the second one was Final Fantasy X-2. Everyone was like, you have to put it on there. And I was like, I don't have to, but we'll see. And it's not, I don't hate the dress sphere system. Look, I'm a transmog glamour person for days. Like, I'll sign up for a good dress sphere. Like, that's fine. I just don't like Final Fantasy X enough to want to do more of it.
Well, the thing is, I don't like Final Fantasy X, and I love Final Fantasy X too.
And I will say, in terms of gameplay, like not even thinking about story, Final Fantasy X-2, the reason why I liked it is in terms of just the gameplay and the job system and the way they incorporated it into it, Final Fantasy X-2 had some of the most engaging gameplay for me. Which is weird considering that the story was a lot of anime bullshit.
I've already said my tolerance for anime bullshit is in the stratosphere.
Yeah. But no, it was definitely up there. But what people say about Final Fantasy Tactics, yes, absolutely. Final Fantasy Tactics, not your typical Final Fantasy game because it's a tactics game, but in terms of story, one of the better Final Fantasy stories in the series.
Something like Ivalice, right?
They need to find a good way to release it.
Right.
That's the problem I've told everybody who's like, you should play tactics. I'm like, because there's a part of me that doesn't want to play a tactics game on stream because I annoy myself with how I play tactics games, and I'm sure it would annoy other people. That's a whole other can of worms. But the other is just like, look, I don't have a way to easily legally play it and show it to you. And yes, I could go the realm of illegally playing it, but I'd rather not if I can avoid it. So Square Enix, please, you're listening. I know you are. Find a way to re-release the tactics game or games, because the Game Boy ones are really good too.
Considering how popular the Pixel remaster has been, I will not be surprised if they do a similar treatment to tactics, even within the next year. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
I mean, you could just do the Return to Ivalice Alliance raids and get the same effect, really.
Yeah,
Is it going to be the same effect? Because I got to tell you, I have played through Final Fantasy 14 twice now, although Endwalker only once, but from ARR to Into Shadowbringers patch content 2 times. And the second time was because I was mad at myself for skipping story, for not paying enough attention, for not knowing what it was going in and wanting to take it all in and genuinely appreciate the game the way it should be appreciated. And there was one thing in the entire series of the game that I skipped the first time and skipped the second time, and that was the Return to Ivalice raids, which were boring as shit.
So you are never going to experience Bajja, huh?
No, I did Bajja.
Wait, how? You have to do. Don't you have to do finish evil? Yeah, you have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me clarify. I skipped the cutscenes.
Okay, fair.
Is that the one?
I did the raids. I think the raids are actually pretty decent.
I was making a joke about that because I am fully expecting a whole bunch of tactics lovers to send in emails or tweets at me going, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Because I know tactics is better than the garbage storyline that was the Return to Evil East raids. I hated them so much, and the fact that they made them a prereq. I don't even really like doing the raids all that much, just because other people failing the mechanics gets me killed way too often in those raids.
Oh, sir.
Mm.
Oh, sir. Please come try Savage.
No, thank you. I know my tolerance for getting murdered by other people's mistakes, and I cannot handle Savage raiding.
See, that's the one I don't understand why people quit. Like, I don't have that hard of a time with the Evil East raids, but the first time I ever experienced toxicity in a group in Final Fantasy XIV was in an Evil East raid at the end of the very last one.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, we wiped one time. One time and it was the first time in the entire raid, including the boss before the final boss, which is a lot harder. But we wiped one time because not enough people did the mechanic where you have to catch the things falling from the sky.
Yeah.
And we wiped one time and someone goes, all you have to do is watch a video before you come in the raid. Is that too much to ask from you? Can you please watch videos before you go into the raid? This is ridiculous. What a bunch of loser noobs. And everybody got mad at the person, rightfully so. But like, do you know how long the video for the Evil East raid is and how many mechanics you have to learn from a single watching of that video?
I will say this:
who make the videos split it into two parts. So
yeah, I did actually watch videos on the Evil East raid and the bosses, and I will say this: watching them hardly did any favors for me. It actually playing the fight made me understand it 10 times more than listening to them talk about all the mechanics.
I will say videos probably should only be super required for Savage and most regular stuff. It's expected to wipe a few times, especially if it's new. Like, the way that Final Fantasy raids are designed is to slowly teach you mechanics until you get all of it. And so, yeah, like wiping one time on a new mechanic and then going back because you know now you get it. Like, yeah, that's part of the dance.
Yeah,
but,
and
that's why there's battle reses.
And the other time, so again, and that was the only time we wiped in the entire raid. I couldn't believe someone was that mad from a single wipe. I was like, boy,
were they a tank?
You would not do well in World of Warcraft, let me tell you. If this is your reaction to a single wipe, you need
or they do very well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the right mindset, right?
But well, they would definitely be like KYS, just leave.
The other one that I had was somebody got mad, and look, sometimes it's just the way it goes. But you know how on that last boss, they do a mechanic where they fire off like rows of ice and it separates everybody. They're like ice walls, you can't get past them, and then they put circles under all the players that are trapped. In the thinnest pie you can possibly imagine, I'm going to say 98% of the circles dropped on the 60% of the raid got trapped in that. And there was nothing you could do. I just watched almost the entire Alliance party die from a single mechanic in 1 second. There was nothing that could happen. They had no room to move. For some reason, the vast majority of players were in the same area, and all of those players got targeted by the circle mechanics, and it just went from 3 nice full up alliances to there were like 3 people left when it was done. It was a massacre, and I thought it was funny, but somebody was not pleased about it.
Yeah,
well,
I you know what's weird is that because I'm doing Savage and a lot of it is pugging, and I really don't run into that much toxicity. It seems like toxicity comes from like normal modes and like Raid Finder, like anything that you can just queue for. I don't know. I guess it's because like if you're doing Party Finder and you have to like sign up for it and like try to make connections and like talk to people, then you don't want to just be. It takes away some of your anonymity.
Well, and if you're opting into prog content, you kind of know what you're getting. You know that if you're going in the progression that you are going to try, sometimes you are going to fail, sometimes you're going to fail a lot. That's what progression's all.
I've seen people get like a little salty, but I would not say that they got toxic. And the most salty they get is just being like, I'm done, and then dropping group. They don't like insult someone specifically or be like, you all suck. They're just like, okay, that's it for me. Bye.
I have no patience for it anymore because I ran with a group that timed out. We died so many times on Zodiark the first time we had to fight him.
Regular?
Yeah, we essentially wiped. We had a like 0.5% HP wipe because the timer expired.
Ooh.
Oof.
Yeah,
I feel like if you are on your last attempt, that the timers I feel like if time runs out on normal content, like stuff that's not Savage, if the timer expires, it should let you play it out until you win or wipe.
Yeah, I would agree with that as somebody that would have beaten Zodiark a whole queue earlier if things had gone differently. But we laughed about it. Like, we knew it was coming. We didn't think we were going to make it. And people were laughing and joking about it in chat because we had a few dead people that were real talkative. But, that's what it was. And like, the Zodiark fight was super fun because most of us were new. Nobody could figure out the star in the sky mechanics. I still can't figure out the friggin' turn mechanic. Like, I understand it, but my brain does not understand what happens to vertical or horizontal lines when they're turned 90 degrees. It just breaks my brain. I'm not built for that kind of geometry. I'm like, no, this will be 100% safe, guaranteed. And then it rotates and I'm still just in the middle of the beam. It's like, fuck, how did this happen? I need a piece of paper like that I can set on my desk and just twist and go, I understand. This is where I need to stand because there's something about it. I cannot do those two lines. That mechanic is completely alien to me.
I definitely understand that. That's how it was like for me the very first time, and then it's from then on I got to see everyone else experience that pain. But I more than understand that, and I cannot wait to relive that kind of pain and agony when they come out with more parts to Pandemonium, because Pandemonium's definitely been a journey.
G3 now.
Yeah.
I've reached in rage. It is a clusterfuck. It is ridiculous. I want to like live stream at some point just so you guys can see what Savage is like, because sweet Jiminy Jesus. I think probably P2 is like the worst right now because there's so many mechanics where it's like if one person fucks up, we are all dead. And it's like if one person stands in the wrong spot, we are all getting yeeted. There's nothing we can do about it. And it's also like you have to be on these very narrow paths, and if you put your toe in the poo water, you get dropsy, and you fucking die. And as a bard, I had to turn off my auto turn to target because I was just constantly stepping in the poo water. Poo water will get you.
Every
well, I'm interested to see how far you are into your progression in a couple weeks. But
oh yeah, that's true.
That being said, we are kind of at time, a little past time. But I mean, when you bring on a fourth person on the show, and when it's John, you expect things to go a little bit long. So I was totally prepared for that.
I talk a lot. It's fine.
Hey, it's what podcasters do. I hear they talk.
Yeah, that's important. It's an important skill to possess for this profession, really.
John, thank you so much for joining us. This episode was everything I could have hoped it would be, and then some. And of course, you are always welcome back on to talk about Final Fantasy XIV, because but before I even started this thing, I know you mentioned that you had a desire to talk about Final Fantasy XIV somewhere. So we're happy to give you that place to talk about it.
Yeah, I need it. I need to be able to pull out a soapbox and talk about it without the like skeptical glances from the unknowing masses at the same time. Because if I talk about it on Core, everyone's like, "God, he's doing it again." We don't want to hear about it, John. None of us are playing it, and it's But I'm gonna keep talking about it because it's all I'm playing.
Awesome. Well, you do involve yourself in some other shenanigans, such as Core and some other stuff as well. So how about you let folks know how they can find all of that?
Well, I'm going to just simply recommend follow me on Twitter at Jon_Jagger. That's the best place to go to find out when I'm streaming, when I'm podcasting, what shows I'm on. Otherwise, you can just catch me podcasting on Core, or there will be dungeons.
Awesome. And Meagan, how about you? You can find me on Twitter at CatMomMeagan. That's Meagan. I have links to my Tumblr, my art stuff, and my webtoon.
And Brandon, how about you?
Twitter.com/thebmat. There's a link in my, my profile that takes you to everything else I've got going on, including a Dungeons and Dragons podcast where Ro is still trying to drive me insane.
It's one of my favorite things to do is to just give Brandon's character more mental and emotional trauma every other session. It's wonderful. It's great. You can find me on Twitter at RowWCR. Also catch me on +5 to hit with Brandon here. Should have another episode dropping about a day or two after you hear this one as well. Of course, the theme for our show is Alex Moukala's Imagine Boss theme for Endwalker. Do check out his YouTube channel for more great music from him. Link to it can be found in the show notes, and any other music that you might hear on the show that's a derivative of Final Fantasy XIV music belongs to Square Enix. No copyright infringement is intended. John, thank you once again for being on the show here. Look forward to having you on hopefully sometime soon. I'm really... We are in interesting times because we're just a couple weeks away from finding out what's next for Final Fantasy XIV with that live letter, and it should be some interesting stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, for John, for Meagan, Brandon, and of course, as always, for Butterscotch, this is Brian Black. Until next time, may your loot rolls be high, your glamour fantastic, and your duties always complete. Brandon?
The Exarch is not your precious cinnamon roll. He's a Graham cracker.
Oh my fucking God.
Take care, everybody.
I found that funny too, but I'm not allowed to say anything after I've said goodbye.